I just, I just, I just speak my peace, keep my peace.
Let me start this episode off by saying I don't condone nor side with the idiots who are using their platform to justify the killing of a 16-year-old unarmed black girl. I feel like I had to start the episode off with that disclosure or disclaimer because there are a lot of black males using their platforms, using to speak out and side with the officer who murdered Makia or Makaya. I don't know I exactly pronounce her name correctly. I believe it's Makia, who murdered her in broad daylight while responding to a disturbance call. I don't know why, but actually I have an understanding why, not justifying it, but I feel like it's important that I start this episode off and let you all know that I'm one of the black males that not siding with these idiots who chooses to use their platforms to align with things like this. Now, with all that being said, welcome to episode 90 of the Speak on Peace podcast. As always, I'm your gracious host, Greg Lacey. Like we always do about this time, I hope that this episode has reached you all in good health. Hope that you all are still taking care of yourselves, whether physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever the case it may be, and protecting your loved ones. Even though things are opening up and the conditions are getting better, COVID is still out here. So hope that you're all still taking those precautions to protect your loved ones. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If this is not, welcome back. Hopefully I'm able to retain all of your listenership. So my YouTube viewers, what's good? Thank you for tuning in to the Speak on Peace podcast. As always, I greatly appreciate you all tuning in. This episode is going to be a somber one. I'm going to give you all a warning now. I'm going to get into in depth about that disclaimer I just opened with later in the podcast. But it was a very just, I feel like for everyone, just emotional week. For me, I know it was emotional. But just the things I'm covering in this episode is just a recap of my week and things I've dealt with, and as a result, that is going to make for a kind of a somber episode. Before I do start anything, I do want to say rest in peace to Makia or Makaya Bryant. Rest in peace to Terrence Clark. Rest in peace to Shock G. Rest in peace to Daryl White. Rest in peace to Andrew Brown. Rest in peace to Isaiah Brown. Rest in peace to Alexis Carvalho, and I apologize if I mispronounced his name. Rest in peace to Ming Zi Zhu. I apologize if I mispronounced his name. Rest in peace to Anthony Alvarez. And rest in peace to all of those whose names I may have missed. What a wild week this has been. Last week, I recorded the episode a day early just so I can capture my emotions in real time. The results of the guilty verdicts from the Derek Chauvin trial. And as a result, it allowed me, I start preparing for the next episode as soon as I finish one episode. I may take a day to, advertise a new episode on social media and things like that. But after that, I pick back up and start to see stories that I can cover in the next episode. And this week, the stories have been plenty. And they all have surrounded death. I will say, I've been covering in regards to like the end result of COVID and how we all are going to be affected by it in later years. Things surrounding COVID as well, just like deaths not related to COVID during this time, has also been plenty. And so I think that these past 2 years are going to affect us all. We've lost entertainers. We lost personal people. I mean, we lost people in our family. We lost friends. We lost coworkers. Whether that's the COVID, whether that's natural causes, whether that's the death or homicide, I feel like death have been plentiful in the past couple of years since COVID has really hit the scene. here in the United States. And that's a lot. Like, if COVID wasn't enough, that the lives that COVID has claimed, still dealing with natural death and dealing with, people being murdered and, all that stuff, like, that's a lot to take in. And I feel like this past year, we're barely in April. Not barely in April, because it's the end of April. So we're barely about to be in May, not even halfway through the year yet, and I feel like we've seen and heard and dealt with a lot of deaths. In the previous episode, I spoke about, as soon as the world opened up, we started to see mass shootings. There was like 3 in the span of 1 week. Homicides are still going on, have been going on throughout this entire lockdown. Natural causes, people dying of natural causes. It's just been so much. And then this past week for me is like, it's all I've been seeing. And so my recap, just to take you all through my past week. So I recorded episode 89 a day early, just so as I just said, so I can, capture all of my emotions and how I felt about the result of that trial. And if you all remember episode 89, I spoke about, I didn't believe that, that guilty verdict being a precedent for pigs and being found guilty or being held accountable for their actions moving forward. But I feel like it's a step in the right direction. The reason why I say I didn't feel like it was a precedent was because I think there are going to be more. I don't think the issue lies in us seeing justice served. The issue lies with the way these pigs serve these areas that they're not familiar with and serve people who they're not familiar with. That's where the issue lies. Certain departments, they try to issue trainings so that, there's a, excuse me, so that there's a better understanding. But at the end of the day, that is what the problem is. They don't see people of color as humans. And so that's why we continue to have these incidents where people who are sworn in to, quote unquote, serve and protect these areas that are highly populated by people of color, they tend to execute them as if they were animals because they don't see them as humans. They weren't taught that way, whether it was their family upbringing, whether it was the way that their jobs, force prejudices on certain people, whatever the case it may be, they don't see us as human beings. And so that opens the door, that opens the avenue for them to continue to carry out these executions on people of color, opposed to how they deal with people who look like them. That's where the issue lies. And so I recorded that last episode. A lot of people were happy. I told you all last episode, I didn't want to be a negative Nancy, because I feel like more like they're going to continue to happen. And sure enough, one happened like an hour or so within that guilty verdict. So I recorded that episode, finished it, watched the news to see what everybody was speaking about in regards to the results of the 3 guilty verdicts, and just seeing the landscape of the world and how people felt. And during this time, I started to see another video shared of someone being murdered by a police officer, literally the same day. The first day that I saw it, not even the first day, probably the first couple of hours I saw it, I was kind of ignoring it because I was like, I wasn't sure how recent it was. I was really just trying to focus on preparing to, release that podcast and market it and whatever. And I just kind of put it on the back burner. Later that night, as I'm getting ready to go to bed, I was like, okay, let me see what this is, because there was a body cam that was released. And the body cam I saw was, well, here's the details. And I don't have all the details, so I should disclose that before I do get into it. I'm just reading the details that I've seen that's been shared. There was a 16-year-old girl in a foster home who I guess got into it with her mother, refused to do something. And as a result, the mother called or had her older foster children confront her because the mother couldn't get her to do what she wanted. Again, this is all hearsay. I'm not speaking all this to be fact. because I haven't seen proven details. I haven't seen proven facts regarding the case, whatever it may be. And one thing led to another, and the 16-year-old girl somehow it led to her being in an altercation with older women. The reports are like it was literally adults that she was fighting against, and like I guess they attempted to jump her, or they did jump her. And during this time, she called the police, just for help. She probably feared for her life. She probably felt like she was outnumbered. She probably felt like she was outpowered, and so she called for police, to help her. Um, dispatch dispatch police 3 minutes. I don't know why it was such a break. I don't know what the protocol is for things like this in regards to when police are dispatched, but police wasn't dispatched until 3 minutes. And I know that 3 minute, like a 3 minute interval in between that time that, that they were requested and the time that they were actually dispatched. That seems like a long time. Like I can think about just like 3 minutes. If I'm fearing for my life and I call someone, and then not that they're not going to be there for 3 minutes, but they're not even leaving for 3 minutes, a lot of things can happen. So one thing led to another. I guess the fight ensued. She's fighting multiple girls, and at some point she brandishes a knife. I don't know if the knife was to threaten anybody. I don't know if the knife was to actually take the life of anybody. I don't know. She's not here to tell her story, so we will never find out. It's all he say, she say. The body cam that I saw was an officer arriving at the scene and just shooting her. That's all I saw in my video was a white officer getting out of his car, seeing a 16-year-old girl, and shooting her 4 times. I'm not getting into depth about how I feel about it because I'm gonna cover her death specifically later in the episode. But that's just what I saw. So this was Tuesday. The next day, actually, I'm gonna skip the next day because I didn't see this happen in real time. I just found out about the story. But there was something that happened the next day in regards to an unarmed man and a police shooting. So that day passes. And then Thursday comes. The release of the podcast. I'm on social media, listen to this episode, brand new episode, listen to this episode. In between that, I'm also working. You all know, I work a job. Like I work from 9 to just about 6 or 6:30. And so it's literally just a busy day for me in between, my job and in between me and this podcast. It's literally just like it's a busy day and everything is happening so fast. During this time, I see news that an up-and-coming star athlete is involved in a deadly car crash. Now, I don't know whether this to be true because I know a lot of times we see things like this on social media and people jump to conclusions and people kill people. So my first thought is, damn, if this is true, I hope that is not life-threatening. I hope that is not fatal, and hopefully that, he's able to come through. The basketball star I'm speaking about is 19-year-old Terrence Clarke, who played 1 season at Kentucky this past season. Came into Kentucky, the number 1 kid in the state in Massachusetts, and was a highly touted prospect going into Kentucky. Unfortunately, in Kentucky, he suffered a lot of injuries, so like his season was short. That, along with teams dealing with COVID, it was just basically like a very short window for him this past year. However, throughout all that with the injuries, throughout the short season with COVID and all that, he was still a highly touted prospect going into the NBA draft this year. So he opted out or he forewent, I guess the term is forewent the rest of his college eligibility and entered in the NBA draft. This is a kid who projected to be a lottery pick. And that speaks volumes to how talented this kid was. He suffered injuries his freshman year in college. He didn't play too much in college, and still he's one of those kids that a team feel like they can that he can change their franchise, that they're willing to invest in. That's just a word. What he would have been drafted is all hypothetical, but this is what I believe. This is the conversations around him, and so this is someone who I've been a fan of for the past couple of years, and so I see that, and immediately I'm thinking well, I hope he's all right. An hour or so go by, and the car crash proves to be fatal. And this just like it was hard. It was hard to see. Um, Video was released. I guess that the details surrounding this specifically was that um, he was pulling up on an intersection and he ended up taking a red light. I don't know what led to him taking a red light. I don't know if it was like lead foot. I don't know if something happened, a car malfunction, and forced him to go forward. Whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter. We're talking about a death here. A mother lost their son, a brother lost his brother, grandparents lost their grandchild, whatever the case may be. It's unfortunate. But the details of that is just he ended up running a red light, clipped the front of a car, and once he clipped the front of that car, his car then crashed into a wall and then struck a pole. He was rushed to the hospital, but the efforts to the efforts to revive his life, they failed, and so this was proven to be fatal. And I was just thinking, like, and you all know here on this podcast, like, there's been a couple episodes where I big up Rich Paul. Rich Paul is one of my favorite people in the sports management world. And the day before his death, he had just signed with Clutch Sports Management Group, the same sports group that Rich Paul owns, in which that represents LeBron James, Anthony Davis, um, just to name a few. And so, just the previous day, I had seen that announcement that he signed with one of the top sports agency. And I remember speaking about that with friends and things, just not him specifically, just but because there was a bunch of athletes that had signed that same day, and he was just one of them. And I remember just thinking about thinking about Rich Paul. He's doing what he's doing still capturing the top athletes in their classes, and molding these young athletes into superstar athletes. And this was the day prior. Then the day after that, to see that this kid lost his life leaving a workout as he's preparing to enter the NBA draft, it was just heartbreaking. We think about, especially with black people, the NBA, NFL, whatever the case may be, these windows of opportunities provide the opportunity to change not only lives of the athlete, but families for generations. And so here's a kid that's a couple months away from seeing his lifelong dream realized, and it's just taken away at a snap in an instant. And that, like, it made me, it honestly made me feel some type of way seeing, the outpouring from so many people, young kids who were a fan of him, his peers, the 18, 19-year-old athletes who are either in college, entering college, or in the NBA that befriended him through, playing against him, playing with him, and growing up with him and things like that. Seeing the pro athletes who were befriending him, just because they knew, the talent he possessed and a good person. And just seeing the accounts with everybody, accounting for how good of a person he was, the personality he had, like, that did something to me. For 2 days, I sat there and just read, posts about how people were affected by this loss and what he meant to so many people. And it was heartbreaking. To read that, he died with his mother by his side. That was heartbreaking. Not to be selfish, but that's something that, like, to for your kids to have a dream and a goal, and they're about to attain that, and they're doing everything right to make sure that they get to where they want to go, and then to see their life taken away, that has to be heartbreaking. Again, I'm not a parent, but I couldn't imagine what that may feel like. And so, like, for 2 days straight, like, that did something to me, because even to this day, almost a week later, people are still sharing, highlight videos of him, sharing pictures of him, this young kid with this big old smile, this young kid joking around with his friends, like that is unfortunate. In that same day, we lost a hip hop icon, hip hop legend, a hip hop pioneer, Shock G. These things happened the same day. an up and coming star and a legend in his own right, Shock G, producer, rapper, talent scout, the man who introduced the world to Tupac. Um, these these two things happened the same day. Now just think about that. I'm thinking about. I took you all through just my account for the Makia or Makaya Bryant death, and just like having to see that before I went to bed, and letting that ponder for a day or two, and then not even being able to like really process that, and then dealing with the death of a young kid who I was a fan of, a young kid who I followed, the death of someone in the industry who I'm so fond of, someone who meant something to my favorite rappers. Like I saw Lupe Fiasco posted. You all know Lupe Fiasco, my favorite rapper. I've spoken about this podcast, if you know him personally, I seen Lupe Fiasco posting about what this meant to him, or what Shock G meant to him, and what he did for his career and things like that. Like that hurts. This was Thursday. I just said that Terrence Clark death like really sat with me for 2 days. So that was Friday and Saturday. I still didn't get over Saturday, but it was a weekend and I was doing things, so I was busy. I wasn't really focused on it. Go to sleep Saturday, wake up Sunday morning. I seen the passing of one of my high school teammates in track and field, Daryl White. He was shot Saturday night. And so now I have to see because we were friends on Facebook. I'm not going to say that he was my friend, but he was my teammate. So like, at one point in time in my life, we probably saw each other a lot and we conversed a lot. He was just a real fun, loving guy, a character, very talented. I must say that because he was a he's a 4-year letterman in football, I believe. I believe he played varsity his freshman year. I could be wrong, but I believe he played varsity his freshman year. He was a 2-year letterman in track, which is very talented kid. He had a smile, light up the room. Always, I hate to use the word vibe, but he always he was one of those people who had good vibes, always making people laugh, always doing something to like, amuse people. And so I woke up Sunday morning and I'm seeing people post, RIP Daryl and tagging him, and people, with the crying emojis and all this stuff. And I'm seeing this plastered on my Facebook all Sunday morning. And even still to this day, people are still posting it. This is someone whose life was claimed at a very young age. This is a type of death that, a lot of us would become numb to. And processing all these deaths, the culmination of people I didn't know, and then to end the week with the death of someone who I once knew, someone who I saw 5 days a week, maybe 6 days that we had a track meet on a Saturday. Someone who I frequent with it. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Well, someone who I frequently saw at one point in my life, to see his life be claimed, to see that he's no longer here, to see how this is affecting people who I once went to school with, once went to, converse with a lot of, like people who I once close with. Like this affected a lot of people. He was younger than me, but like a lot of my friends who were my age were close to him. Even the friends that were younger than me, they were very close to him. And so like that affected me, to see pictures of him and his kids plastered all over Facebook. It was heartbreaking. It was gut wrenching to hear that his life was claimed just the prior day. And now here's another mother without a son. Now here's 5 children without a father. Here's girlfriends, baby mothers without a counterpart to help in raising their children. Here's friends without a friend. Here's brothers without a brother, and so on and so on. Like I don't know him personally. I don't know his family personally. I don't talk to too many people that I went to high school with to this day. But that doesn't, remove me, or that doesn't make me unaffected in seeing and hearing about his passing. And so this is just this is just 1 week. This is recording on Tuesday, reading about Ma'Khia Bryant, and then going all the way up until Sunday, finding out about the passing about Daryl. This was Sunday. Carried over until Monday, still carrying over until now. But this is what my Facebook has been filled with for the past couple of days, and rightfully so. There's people mourning over his loss, people, dealing and coping with him no longer be here, and people, just sharing their love for him and expressing their love for him and things like that. It's just like it did. I don't know what it did to me, but it did something to me to have to process all these deaths, and then for my week to end with the death of someone I know personally. Those were those 4 deaths. Monday, I woke up and I found out that another man had been killed, an unarmed man had been killed by police. And this wasn't when I said that, I skipped Wednesday, but something actually happened Wednesday. I just missed it on Wednesday. But this was Monday when I found out that Andrew Brown was killed by the police. The circumstances of his death, it's a bit murky because the details that's been released are contradicting. There's no body cam footage that's been released. I guess in North Carolina, there's a law that, body cam footage just does not have to be released to the public. The family attorney did request to have the body cam footage released, and they denied it. So that tells me 2 things. They're trying to avoid Derek Chauvin happening to where he's found guilty by media, and that potentially pouring over into the jury's decision and finding in the verdict for him. But that also tells me that there's something they're not telling us that's on that body cam footage. The family did see the body cam. I believe it was like 20 seconds, but they only saw the body cam of 1. From what I heard, there were 8 responding officers on the scene, but they were only allowed to see the body cam footage of 1 person. But reading this on Monday, it's like, damn, there was just 1 on Tuesday. And so there was another one the day after. It just doesn't stop. And it just goes back into my statement about they don't see us as humans. And so they're going to continue to carry out these executions. From what I read, this man was killed while in his car with his hands on a steering wheel. I don't know this to be fact. I've read many different variations of the story of what happened, but he was shot in the back of his head. Being shot in your back of your head is execution. I don't care how you frame it. It's either execution or assassination. Call it whatever you want to call it, but that tells me that you are not threatening somebody. If you are either shot in the back or shot in the back of the head, that tells me that you were either running away from somebody, you weren't facing somebody, and so you posed no threat to anyone. Because how can you pose a threat to someone you're not facing them? And so this happened on Monday that I discovered this happened on Wednesday. So that was literally a week just filled with death. Granted, I didn't uncover this on Monday, but it happened. Monday goes by, the day goes by, and I find out more details about Andrew Brown. And then Tuesday I wake up, and as I always cover in this podcast, I watch the news. I watch the news every morning. Tuesday I wake up, and there's a murderer going around LA just shooting people. And this was the drive-by shooting that claimed the lives of Alexis and Ming Z. Apparently there was some man driving around LA, pulling into people in their cars. And this was like early in the morning, like 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. Pulling into people in their cars and just shooting them and driving off. He shot 3 people, he wounded 1, and claimed the lives of 2, which were the 2 names I just read off. One of them waiting in the line of Starbucks with his girlfriend. They're probably on their way to work, and they both probably wanted something to drink before they started the day off, and someone just pulled up to the car and shot him. Luckily, the girlfriend wasn't harmed. She was able to get out the car, but she had to live her life without her counterpart. She had to live her life without knowing what the future held for them. The second man that was killed was an Uber driver. He pulled up to his car and shot him. This is probably a man, granted, look, this was early in the morning. This is probably a man that was just out, just trying to make money, provide for himself, provide for his family, just trying to make a change in his own life. And his life was taken by this crazy man. And if that wasn't enough, the next day, body cam footage was released of the murder of um, Anthony Alvarez. This was a young man in Chicago who was also killed while running away from the police. So this is this is my entire week, just death after death after death. And if that wasn't enough, I was already just going through something personally because I took on a task this past week to convert. My grandmother has a lot of homemade videos. You know, back in the '90s, she had a camcorder, and she has probably 48 hours worth, probably even more, because I haven't even finished yet. Probably 48 plus hours worth, nearly 72 hours worth of just homemade videos from the early '90s to the early 2000s. And so, I took it upon myself to get those from her, convert them to digital, just so that, we're able to watch them and relive those memories and things like that. But in these videos, like, I'm now seeing family members who I have not seen in 10 plus years. Like I spoke about it, I forget the episode it was, just about my grandfather. Um, my grandfather's in a lot of these videos. My great grandmother's in a lot of these videos. Even on my mother's side, this is my grandmother on my father's side. But there's even people on my mother's side who are in these videos who I'm seeing and have not seen for 10 plus years. Now, like on the outside, it's like you can't really tell that I'm affected by it. And I can't really tell that I'm affected by it. But I do know that there is doing something to me because I'm seeing these people for the first time in so many years. I'm hearing their voices. I'm seeing their mannerisms. I'm seeing them laugh. And I'm seeing them enjoy life. And it's had to deal with the fact that they're not here anymore. Seeing the video of my baby brother as an infant, literally 2 months, not even 2 months, because this was Christmas, a month after he was born. My brother was born on November 19th. So literally a month after my brother was born, I seen a video of him. And I'm just, internally dealing with all these things. I don't know how I'm dealing with it because it's not really affecting me. I don't know if it's like a culmination of everything is going to, ball up and explode eventually, or I'm just going to be okay. But somehow I know that this is affecting me, whether I'm wearing that emotion or not. Somehow this is affecting me. Whether good or bad, maybe it's good that I'm seeing these people. Maybe it's doing something good for my heart to see these people and enjoying their life. But just think about that, just dealing with that emotional toll, and then reading about all these deaths, dealing with all these deaths, compartmentalizing all these deaths, assessing all these deaths and these murders over the past week. And I'm someone who I think I deal with death well. I think I deal with emotions well, as far as just like not really letting it control me, not really affect me and things like that. But I'm not the only person going through things like that. Like, take away the last tidbit I gave you about the homemade videos. Just think about the people who are dealing with the same deaths and dealing with the same information, and even more that I have uncovered this past week. Think about the people who are personally affected by those deaths this past week. It's a lot to deal with. It's far too much to deal with, and it's just this world is crazy, man. I speak of all this to continue to stress to you all: protect yourselves, protect your loved ones. We can't go to Starbucks in the morning to get tea or coffee without being murdered. We can't call the police to help when our lives are being threatened without being murdered. These vehicles, a lot of people call them death traps. I don't even know the statistics of fatal car crashes every year, but I know they're high. And so we have to worry about that because a lot of us rely upon these things as transportation. We can't just be out working early in the morning without being murdered. We can't be out on a Saturday night with our friends enjoying our lives without events taking place that claim our lives. And then if all those reasons are not enough, we still have to deal with the eventual thing as natural death. Like they say, there's only one thing. There's only two things that's guaranteed in this life, and that's death and taxes. And it's just a lot. It's a lot to process. And I hope that for those of you who it may take a larger toll on than it is me. And just because I look like I'm all right doesn't mean that I'm all right. I hope that you find some type of solace. I hope that you find some type of escape, whether it's for a day, whether it's for an hour. Just take your mind off things because it's a lot. I know I keep saying it, but it really is, and it's overwhelming. For me to be speaking on this and for me to be using my platform to express this, it says a lot because I'm not someone who really speaks about their emotions a lot. But I say it again, it's just a lot, and I don't mean to laugh because none of this is funny, but it's a lot, man, and I don't know how we're dealing with it. But this is not it. Like, we're barely in May. COVID is still out there. Things are starting to open back up, and we still have to deal with those other factors I just listed. It's going to be a lot of death throughout the rest of this year, and we as a people are not all right. Now to get into the curious case of these idiots who are justifying the murder of Ma'Khia Bryant. To give you all a backstory, males, not only, it's not solely males, but these are just the accounts that I've been seeing, are using their social media platforms to justify the murder of Ma'Khia Bryant, claiming that, she had a knife, or claiming that she was about to kill one of the people that she was getting into altercation with, claiming that, because she had a knife, it was okay to justify it. I don't, again, side with any of those idiots, but this is out there. Here's my thought. There are means in justification. When you're trained in not justification, there are means in de-escalation. When you're trained in de-escalating, you are trained to de-escalate high tense situations. You are trained to de-escalate low tense situations. You are trained to de-escalate life-threatening situations. You are trained to de-escalate non-life-threatening situations. Like, you have to be trained on it. You have to be certified on it to become an officer because you have to deal with these type of situations. There's nothing around it. When you're in the military and you have to deploy, you have to be trained on these things, especially when you're going into these hazardous duty zones. You have to be trained on these things because it may be a life and death situation. You may come across someone who may be, threatening your life or others. You have to learn how to de-escalate these situations to prevent that. And there's no difference from these pigs who are sworn in to serve and protect. And so that is the reason why I say there is no justification in executing a 16-year-old girl. Shooting her 4 times in her torso, there's no justification for that. But some of y'all think that it is, and I think all of you are POSs. I'm not going to cuss on this platform. You don't know what POS is, Google it. But that's just simply how I feel. There's never any justification for shooting a 16-year-old black girl 6 times in her torso that's not facing you. Like, there's other ways to de-escalate the situation. This goes back to my statement about how they view us, how they dehumanize us. Like, it's easier for them to carry out these executions if they don't see us as equal or don't see us as humans. It allows for them to easily carry out, not have to worry about the consequences. It's unfortunate, but that's the truth. That's why we see so many of these mass murderers, see so many of these violent, offenders who are white detained. There's a article right now that's on the internet. I'm gonna find it for you so that you all can Google it and read it for yourself. There's an article right now titled "Violent White Folks Who Were Taken into Custody with Loving Care by Police." And it's an article that covers 10 different white folks who were detained after claiming the lives of multiple people while still armed with a weapon. And the reason why I bring this up is because you all know, like you all don't know. But for me, I'm personally the type of person who's not going to argue on social media. That's just not my forte. But some people do get into that. I don't. But one justification, or I presented my opinion about, or I presented my opinion to someone who was justifying the murder of this young girl. And after I presented my opinion, they said, because one of the things I brought up was race. They said, everything is not about race. Yes, it is. That's why we continue to see these mass shooters. That's why we continue to see these violent offenders of these white people being walked to the back of squad cars, and black people don't make it there. We're making it to the ambulance, and that's it. It's no shortstop, no shortcut. It's the scene of the crime and the ambulance. No in between. When George Floyd was murdered, the dispatcher, the ER dispatchers, had to tell this idiot, like, yo, get off of him so we can put him on a stretcher. He still had his knee on his neck. There's no shortcut. There's no in-between stops for us. It's scene of the crime, ambulance. And that's it. So don't tell me it's not about color. And don't justify, like, one thing with us males, especially black males, we don't know when to shut the hell up. Like, if you can't speak in terms of, or speak out against why this was wrong, just don't speak at all. Like, there's a mother still grieving. There are friends, there's family still grieving. There's a 16-year-old girl who lost her life. She was shot 4 times by a police officer. It's never okay. It's no justification for it. This podcast is zero tolerance for that. And y'all out here speaking about why it was justified, like this, it's why our women continue to be disrespected. And I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Someone will say, you may be the problem. You're in an interracial relationship. So be it. One thing you will never say about me is that I disrespect black women. Not in friendships, not in relationships, not in courtships, wherever the case may be. No one can say that about me. But us as a whole, as black men, this is why our women are so undervalued. This is why our women are so disrespected. Because we continue to show people that it's okay to not value the lives of our black women. And so everybody just join in on the party and say, okay, their own are doing it, so why can't we do it? It's never okay. That's my closing remark. If you're out here justifying the execution of a 16-year-old black girl, you need to look in the mirror and you need to look deep into the mirror and figure out what's wrong with you, because you don't value black women. And that's all I have for this week. Before we get out of here, my what to watch for this week, eliminate all the brutes on HBO Max. Once again, my what to watch for this week is eliminate all the brutes on HBO Max. That's really all I have. As I just said, that's the Speak More Peace podcast for this week. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe. Thank you all to my YouTube viewership. Make sure you are sharing the podcast. See you all next week. I'm out.